Shut up and sit down.
My name is Andrea Henderson. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Sociology. I teach Intro to Sociology, Social Problems, Sociology of Religion, Sociology of Medicine and Health, and Society Through the Lens, which is a film class. I know, it's a good one. I am interested in the ways in which religion impacts health and family, particularly among communities of color in the US. There is a very long history of examining religion among African Americans, and it is its own unique experience in the context of the United States, given the history of Black people, around slavery, obviously Jim Crow, segregation, and those things, right? Religion was one of the few institutions in which Black people could own themselves, right? Could kind of claim themselves. So when we think about stable institutions in the Black community, you know, it is the church. So there's a growing body of work, right, that suggests that negative early childhood experiences have long-term consequences for people's lives. That makes complete sense, right? But like, is there something that potentially can kind of intervene in those negative experiences, right? So if people who grow up in poverty or experience abuse, is there something that can happen that kind of changes the trajectory of those negative experiences? And so I pose the question, does religion matter? Right? So does religion matter in early life and then also in adulthood? And I walked away with a very complicated answer, right? And it matters. It sometimes exacerbates those negative experiences, and sometimes it protects against those negative experiences. And what I love about that is that life is complicated, right? Social life is complicated. And if you're looking for something easy, sociology isn't the field, right? One of my kind of secondary lines of research is actually looking at historical trauma among African Americans living in the South, which is a purely kind of qualitative project. And that project is really kind of centered around understanding historical experiences of trauma, but also kind of recent experiences of trauma, like the Charleston 9. And there have been, from my interviews, drastic changes. And I think that there's actually a lot of pain that goes along with those changes for my participants. And some of that is people arming themselves. So churches arming themselves, literally congregants carrying guns or soliciting, police to come into their places of worship so that they feel safe. There's also ideas around, should we get metal, detectors and things like that. So there are changes that stem from kind of these, I think what we think of these national conversations, particularly around race and, police brutality and things like that are happening in the context of these kind of local churches. Yeah. I do ask participants to talk about their own experiences with discrimination, right? And some of them are heart-wrenching, starting from, very early on, so thinking pre-K and having teachers talk about you in ways that make you feel inferior, right? So, one of my participants talked about that she could count to 100, and her teacher paraded her around and was like, look at the little Black girl who can count to 100. And in that moment, she was like, there's two things happening. I, as a Black woman, right? Like, I am a Black woman, right? And second, I'm not supposed to know how to count to 100, right? And those are very, those are pains that stay with people for a really long time. And those, so every time I get to talk to a participant, I am kind of honored that they share those experiences with me. The most kind of important implications that my research have is that one, religion is still a kind of salient part of people's lives in the United States, right? It still matters for people's life course, for their health and their family. So that's one. And then two, I think, I think what it suggests is that people use the tools and resources they have available to them. We know that in the face of racial discrimination, Black people use religion and it makes them be able to withstand kind of toxic environments, right? So religion protects Black people in the face of racial discrimination. Several studies have kind of shown this to be true. Survival. No, I'm just kidding. So my experience, right, or how I ended up in this space is I think like the vast majority of undergrad experiences, I had no idea what I was doing. I changed majors 100 times and I couldn't figure out what I was doing. And I took a personality exam that told me that I should be a teacher. And I was like, no, I'm not gonna be a teacher or a social worker, right? It was one of those. But they suggested psychology or sociology. And I signed up for both during the same semester. And I sat in my sociology class and the world aligned, right? It just made sense, right? The things that I had been thinking about, they were talking about. And so, it felt like home, right? Like it just felt like a kind of intellectual home. And then, right, as I think as most undergraduates, I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I was like, I'm gonna avoid real life responsibility. I'm gonna go to graduate school. My best advice that I would give to a burgeoning sociologist, so we're gonna claim you, is, in an environment that continues to talk about diversity and inclusion, right? These are kind of catchphrases that we talk about. I think it's important for you to remember that everyone's life isn't like yours, right? That people's lives are structured in particular ways that provides them opportunity and, disadvantage. And so like building what we call a sociological imagination that allows you to kind of take on different experiences and think about people's experiences in different ways is a valuable tool, not only for you as an individual, right, hoping to one day to kind of, engage in kind of compassion and empathy with people, but it's also a tool that like employers want, right? Can you work in a team? Can you think complexly about the social world and how it frames people's lives? Those are, don't take that, when we talk about those things in sociology, we actually are talking about real life things that matter.